I am gonna have to cover something a little yikesy, because I don't know how I'm gonna come across when I cover this. In fact, actually, I'm fairly certain I'm gonna botch this. But I wanted to cover it anyway, because I feel like it's important. What does it mean to be an ally? A trans ally, an atheist ally, an LGBTQ ally? What does it mean to be that? My opinion is that doing your best to support the people in those groups in whatever way you can, be it voting for politicians that will fight for their rights at the ballot box, or making sure that you're affirming them whenever you have the chance to see them, or even just giving them mental health checkups. I feel like those are all effective ways of being an ally, and there's other ways you can do it too. Like, I have a platform, so I try to fight for the rights of people on my platform, or at least argue for their rights on my platform. Rights to abortion, rights to bodily autonomy, rights specifically also for trans people to exist as they feel they should, and more accurately, as they are, as opposed to what society expects them to be. Now, I don't know if I do a very effective job of that, because it's not for me to decide if I'm doing an effective job for that. Then we hit kind of a weird paradox, because there are some people, and one person in particular who I'm going to be covering, that think that not just me, but literally everybody who is cis is failing in their activism. And I kind of have a counter-argument to this. I have some issues with this mode of thinking. But at the same time, it is a very awkward conversation, because it's almost a contradiction. Because I don't get to choose whether or not I'm being an effective ally. Only the people I'm trying to be an ally to get to choose that. But then when somebody who I'm trying to be an ally to declares unilaterally that I'm failing at it, this method of thinking has stuck me in a paradox. So let's cover it. This is a Twitter from a trans activist named Emily. She actually has an entire website here that I would recommend checking out, but she is a data analyst, and her entire biography is actually here. So if you are interested in reading what she does, I would definitely suggest doing so. I'm not going to cover it all here, but I will say this. They do mention, or she does mention in their stuff, that it was events of 2007 that led them to be an activist, which makes sense. So, let's go ahead and cover what they're saying, because I have some severe disagreements with this, and this is somebody who I want to advocate for. But they, in response to a post that says, cis folks, especially cis women today would be a good day to affirm your support for full inclusion of trans people. Your love for trans people, and the fact that the presence and existence of trans people does not hurt cis people. And I know what this is in relation to, because I've been covering a lot of it on my channel. The conversation about trans people in sports keeps on coming up. And I've pointed out on earlier episodes that my position is finally just, I don't care. A sport of any kind is not more important than the identity and integrity of human beings, especially trans people, as they exist as a minority. So, I don't care about your sport. I care about the identity and integrity of them. And if they actually did significantly impact sports, you wouldn't need to constantly grab anecdotes of trans people winning competitions. You would just be looking at the data and seeing a large amount of trans people winning in competitions across the board. Instead, we have like random-ass anecdotes that people have to grab. So, that all said, Emily has a response to this, which is where I start to hold contention. And it is that I have entirely given up on cis people, particularly cis leftist activists, ever giving two fucks about trans support, to be quite honest. Now, as somebody who is a leftist activist, as somebody who does try to support trans people, and not just by arguing on my channel, but I've tried to have individual ones that have approached me in situations of homelessness and in situations of needing money in between jobs, doing fundraisers for them, and trying to help out in the ways that I can on my channel with the capacity that I can. This is kind of strange to me. Saying that you've given up on trans people being an ally reads almost like it's Martin Luther King's speech about the white moderate, and I'm not 100% certain if that is the vibe that Emily is trying to give off here. But it gets weird. After this, she says that, anywho, yet again I find myself being transphobiaed by fascists with immense audiences, and the cis folks in my communities have offered a grand total of 0 unsolicited supporting messages. Now, if your metric for whether or not somebody's being an effective ally is if you're getting ratioed, harassed, whatever, them not immediately coming to your support, they don't always know that you're actually getting harassed. Moreover, and more importantly here, it's not in it, while it is effective allyship to help people and support them and do mental health checkups and all that stuff, if you cannot do that or you have not done that for any reason, this does not suddenly make you a bad ally, in my book, right? So, for instance, if I had a large group of Christian friends, and I'm an atheist, and I consider myself allies with some of those Christian friends, even though I make anti-theist content on my channel, if I were to get a response done to me by a larger Christian creator, and that response were to be virulent, toxic, what have you, and I never received a single message from any of those Christian friends, I don't think I would consider myself to have been let down by Christian friends enough to say that they can't be effective allies to atheists and any other like political causes. I don't know if I would necessarily take that tack. I don't know if that's the way I'd see it. But Emily continues on to say that if you are if you are cis, you are not a trans ally. You cannot be. I have never seen you succeed. Now, this is where we get really awkward. So if the measurement for someone being an effective ally is whether or not they succeed, I would say that's entirely wrong. Like, completely and totally wrong. At the end of the day, whether or not I, and I'm not trying to take this personally, but whether or not I succeed in what I'm trying to do does not mean that I have not tried my best. And the metric of being an ally should not be success, it should be how hard you're trying. It should be how much effort you're putting in. If you're doing nothing, then yeah, I could say you're an ineffective trans ally. But if you are doing stuff, it's just not working, you're still an ally. You just might not be a particularly effective one. If you are trying your best and doing your best, I would say that that should be the metric with a caveat. If you're trying your best, but the ways in which you do it manifest as various forms of transphobia, then that would be an issue for me. For instance, if you are trans in the your dad sense, if you remember Abby Thorne's video on transphobia done on the Philosophy Tube channel ages ago, I would not consider that to be an effective trans ally. You're basically just standing back and doing nothing. For those who don't know, the your dad type of transphobe is someone who says that the trans people can do whatever they want so long as they do it away from them, which gives the implicit idea that there's something wrong about what they're doing and how they exist. That is a form of transphobia. That cannot be effective allyship, but I don't think that a cis person merely being ineffective at their allyship suddenly makes them not an ally. They do at least say that there's one person they do consider to be a trans ally specifically, but as let's explore the thread a little bit to see what some of the comments are. But I don't think I have to explain anymore that I do not agree with this take. And I think that this take is actually a little toxic. Because there is an argument for the ineffective moderate. Before we get into the rest of the stuff in the tweet. Right? The ineffective moderate, or as MLK put it in one of his speeches, the white moderate, is the person that stands by and lets injustice happen. But if a person tries to stop injustice and fails, that does not make them essentially the white moderate that MLK was arguing against. They're doing their best and failing because they do not have enough money, enough support, enough time, enough whatever resource they do not have, even if it's wherewithal and know-how. They do not have it. But they are trying. They are doing their functional best. That's not the same thing. This seems to be trying to take the idea of the letter to the white moderate speech and using it in a much more hasty generalization sense. And I think this alienates cis allies. I don't know if I feel alienated by this, but I also tend to try to steelman and give more scrutiny. But I don't know if everybody else will do that. I don't know if this is going to be like the last straw for somebody who pumps a bunch of money into like the Human Rights Foundation and just sees this and goes, well, fuck it, I'm done. Now, granted, that probably says a lot more about them than it does about Emily, easily. If one trans person saying something you don't like is enough for you to stop supporting the entire trans community, then yeah, that says way more about you. But it feels like this could be one of those straws on a back. When you see something like this, when somebody is basically invalidating any assistance you've given, any help you've given, anything you've done, merely because they, anecdotally, did not receive what they needed. And I don't want to minimize harassment that they've had. I don't want to minimize any of that because I don't know the full context of this. So it is bad that they did not receive adequate support. They? Okay, cool. Thank you for correcting me. I actually, you know what? Okay, no, they did not have pronouns in the bio. But that is still my bad. I could have done a little more research. I literally have their website up right here. And yet, I did not. So I am sorry about that. But, Emily, if you are watching this, I'm sorry for misgendering you. That said, I want there to be effective allyship between cis and trans people, and this does not feel like an effective way to go about that. But then again, like I said, it's not up to me to determine who is and is not an effective ally. That is to be determined by the person who is actively part of the community that I'm trying to ally with. Some of the comments in here, though, as someone who's been rejected and disowned and excommunicated from their friends and family in most of my town, I'll take any outside support I can get, which even if it's not proper, at least they're making a fucking attempt, which is more than I can say of my ex-friends and family. And yeah, this is a thing that gay people used to have to deal with on a much larger scale, though they still do. The church has a lot of influence in this regard. And trans people are having to deal with more and more. As more people are getting comfortable with exploring their gender and realizing that maybe they don't have to conform to the binary. Maybe they don't have to conform to what they were to assign to at birth. They can just be them and comfortably be them. They get alienated from heteronormative society. If their friends, family, and everybody else see them as a Richard, and they say, well, no, my name is Jane now. Or they take a non-binary approach, but either way, they've discarded the name. The dead name's gone. And everybody continues to use that name that is filled with past experiences, past trauma, and is linked to a part of themselves that they have officially discarded. Yeah, that is bad. But at the same time, knowing that, I think alienating all cis people is not a good way to go about this because, like, and granted, this is grabbing a random comment, so this has its own context. But sometimes there are not enough trans people around you to support you. Sometimes you are going to need to rely on cis people. Not everybody can be a blue checkmark. This is, again, not to dismerge Emily. Now, there were two things that they showed here as Exhibit A and Exhibit B. And one of these has been taken down. The other one has also been taken down. But actually, I think no, this one was not taken down. This one is the Exhibit B. Apparently, Exhibit A was bad, but that got taken down by the original person. Exhibit B is, how is that a bit harsh, Emily? Proof that someone isn't an ally. I mean this completely seriously. And if that is what this said, I did not get to see this tweet before it was taken down, so I have no idea what was said here. But yeah, if somebody pointing out that you're painting with a broad brush, you're being a bit harsh, if that alone is enough for you to basically throw this person onto a cross, that is not healthy. And I don't want to be an armchair psychologist here, but this reads to me of somebody who's been hurt and is lashing out at everyone in this regard. I do not know. I do not know the whole story in regards to this. And in reality, I probably should have done more research into this. Phoenix Rising brings up a point in the chat. It comes across like marginalized people have to always be extra special nice to allies, even when those allies refuse to listen. That is actually a fair point. That is a very fair point. I don't like every single criticism of an approach being called tone policing, and I've seen that in other conversations. But I can't read the original comment, so I can't make a judgment call there. Like, it can't read as anything to me because the comment does not exist. It functionally cannot read as anything. But again, I do understand the point, and I do agree that while there is one aspect of this person's been hurt and lashing out, there's another aspect of there comes a point where you're tired of having to treat allies specially because otherwise they might withdraw their support. So there's a multifaceted conversation here. I guess, actually, here's the best way to go about this, for me personally, and not necessarily... I don't necessarily know if this is a thing that's going to happen, or if this will do any good. But given that I do not know all the context, and given that I do not know everything involved here, but I do see some issues. I see some things I disagree with, but I also see a conversation that might need to be had. If this video makes it across to Emily in any way, shape, or form, I readily invite them to send me a DM to figure out what's going on, maybe even hash out this disagreement. If you want to do it live, that's entirely up to you, but there's no reason for me to want to put that on a stage, basically. But I know there's a mixed bag of things here, and I think that this is at the very least a conversation starter for when allyship is and isn't effective, how to properly be an ally, how to properly treat your allies, when you should listen to the people you're trying to be an ally to, and when a conversation needs to be had that involves more of a two-way street. There's a lot of things that are brought up here. And yeah, Phoenix Rising brings up another good point there. These conversations always end up as public spectacles. That's why I am putting it out there that if it needs to be just a private DM, that is perfectly fine with me as well. But with all that said, that's about as much as I wanted to talk about on this particular issue. I know this isn't my normal my normal type of thing. This is more of a giant mixed bag, a giant fustercluck of a video, but maybe some functionally good conversation can come out of here. Things I will not tolerate, though. If you come into the comment section saying how Emily is screwing up and being an asshole, I do not encourage that. Don't do that. And don't use this as an opportunity to go to those tweets and start harassing this person. There's already going to be enough people who are doing that anyway. You don't need to become part of the problem. If you start harassing somebody who you're trying to be an ally to, you've effectively stopped being a good ally to them. At least from what I could discern from the outside. So don't do that. Don't use this as your opportunity to grandstand. Don't use this as your opportunity to send them a bunch of messages. Don't do any of that. Just keep the conversation in the comment section. Give your thoughts. But that's it. Do not go harassing people at all. Please and thank you. With all that said, if you guys enjoyed the video, if you guys have any comments of any kind, the best way you can get those across is by letting me know in the comment section below. There's also ways to support my channel down there if that's what you want to do. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and as always, everyone, insert into video tag.